All right, thank you very much. Looks like when I shared, I didn't, it turned off my video. I don't know if that's a bandwidth saving in the browser, but sorry, I don't have my video on, but it did gray that out and said it was going to, if I stop sharing, when I stop sharing, it'll show it. But anyway, thanks everybody. It's a pleasure to be here at the Omaha Azure user group here tonight. And I'm going to be speaking on managing policy and compliance in Microsoft Defender for Cloud, which is an Azure service previously known up until about a month ago as Azure Security Center and Azure Defender. So we'll walk through all of that a little bit and how that name change affect has adjusted the portal and everything when we get into the demo. But myself, I am Dwayne Natwick. I'm a senior product manager at CloudReach, who is a cloud service provider for Microsoft, AWS, and GCP. We are a Microsoft expert MSP, and I am a product manager for the migration service line. So anything that has to do with cloud migrations and what we're doing in terms of that service and any services around migrations, I own that service line. I'm also an Azure MVP, have been for a couple years now. I do a lot of authoring. I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer, have quite a few years of industry experience and a lot of certifications, including what I'm probably the most proud of, besides having my expert in solution architect. I have all of the Microsoft and Microsoft 365 security certifications, which I'm pretty proud of having completed all of those. I'm active on social media. I do have a blog site under captainhyperscaler.com, a YouTube channel for Captain Hyperscaler, as well as I'm active on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. So the topics here we're going to talk about here in the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to cover, before we get into Microsoft Defender for Cloud, it's important first and foremost to understand policies and initiatives within the Azure environment and how those work for governing your resources, because as we get into maintaining our security posture and managing our security posture in Microsoft Defender for Cloud, we need to understand how these work and how they govern over our security as well as our compliance. And then how do we then utilize those and utilize Microsoft Defender for Cloud for policy and compliance, as well as monitoring and maintaining our overall security posture and performing security posture management by utilizing Microsoft Defender for Cloud as that single source of truth in how that is being done within our Azure environment for our Azure resources, as well as on-premises resources and resources for other clouds such as AWS and Google. So let's jump right in and talk a little bit about policies and initiatives and what they are. So just to kind of define them and kind of bullet them out real quick, policies are our own best practices, and there are multiple, there's quite a few, I'd say close to 100 or so built-in policies within Azure that build those best practices. But they're also, you can customize those and create policies as an organization to provide and to govern over cost, security, and jurisdiction and compliance. And so with these policies all feed into what we get in terms of recommendations, what we can do in terms of auditing our resources, and ultimately what we get when we move into looking at Microsoft Defender for Cloud and how we're managing and monitoring our best practices for our security posture. The other piece of within Azure policy is the initiatives, and what initiatives are is just nothing more than a collection of policies. So so if you have two or more policies that are put together, you're ultimately creating an initiative. And many of these initiatives that are pre-built within the Azure environment are regulatory and standards-based compliance level of of initiatives to, again, control and audit for compliance. So if you have, and we'll go into this a little bit more, but for example, if you're a government organization and you need to adhere to NIST SP 800-53, there is an initiative for that, and you might not be able to see it really well on the screen, but there are 798 policies, and the screenshot needs to be updated because I think it's actually over 800 now that make up the initiative and what resources are audited on when you enable the NIST SP 800-53. And so all of this is a constant audit, and as I said, the policies then govern over your resources, not just your resources that you're creating, but those resources that you already have in place. It will audit those. So as you have changes within your environment, you might go out of compliance to certain policies as things are adjusted within the Azure portal, or if you make adjustments yourself to particular resources, and that might pull compliance away from certain security baselines and your security posture. And like I said, we'll dive into this. I'm not going to bore you with the slides. We'll get into the portal here shortly, and we'll kind of walk through some of this. And the key things around the governance piece of all of this is that there are initiatives and policies for managing our costs, so financial, securing our environment, as well as business initiatives and policies on what we need to do in terms of maybe healthcare, HIPAA and high trust, or like I said before, NIST if we're a government entity or do business with the government, FedRAMP, GDPR, other if we're in other countries, those all fall into those policies and initiatives that then govern over our resources. And Microsoft has a whole bunch of regulatory attestations that they adhere to from a base level for the physical infrastructure, and many of those are listed here on this slide. When you are thinking about and need to have a regulatory standard or adhere to some sort of government jurisdiction, you have your physical infrastructure responsibility that if you're in Azure or another cloud provider is taken care of and handled by that cloud provider, but that does not make you compliant then to that standard. If you see Microsoft adheres to ISO 27001, does not make you and your organization ISO 27001 compliant. There are controls and additional steps that you need to take as the customer on that cloud provider to be compliant. There's processes you have to have, but the great thing about what you can do within the Azure environment is that the physical infrastructure controls are there, and if you were building your own data center, you would have to put those controls in place. So there's a lot shorter path if you maybe sign a government contract or sign a contract with a company with a healthcare provider that requires HIPAA compliance. You can get there a lot quicker utilizing a cloud provider like Azure because of all of these attestations. So how does Defender for Cloud then, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, or what was known as Azure Security Center up until about a month ago, do to help us with that and help us to maintain that security posture, give us that level of security posture management, and also then help us on our route and our pathway to pass an audit for regulatory or industry level of compliance. And what Microsoft Defender for Cloud does is it provides us a one-stop shop. It provides that one source of truth for centralized monitoring, recommendations, and configuration of controls to put in place to increase our security posture, whether it's our identity and role-based access control roles, whether, letting us know that we need multi-factor authentication, help us with update management, help us with our policies, with analytics, and with our threat protection through the various Defender capabilities across our virtual machines, our storage accounts, our databases, our containers, both whether they're Kubernetes or Azure Container Registry, all of those capabilities to protect us against threats and vulnerabilities with those resources are all contained within Microsoft Defender for Cloud. And there's essentially two subscriptions that go into Defender for Cloud that you need to think about. And the great thing about what you get with Azure is when you turn on your Azure subscription and create a tenant, you get a free form of Defender for Cloud at no cost at all. The policies and initiatives immediately get turned on for the Azure Security Baseline, and it immediately starts to assess the resources that you create within Azure and provides you with security recommendations. You get your secure score, which again we'll show when we get into the demo. So there is a continuous assessment and a continuous improvement recommendations that are provided to you at no charge, and you can then make determinations of what controls you need to put in place yourself to increase that secure score based on the security baseline. And that security baseline within Azure is based on best practices across all of Microsoft's partners, their customers, and Microsoft professionals, all coming together and building that that level of baseline that gives you essentially a starting point for you to build a strong security posture and avoid any issues within your environment. Hopefully, you have an enhanced security piece now, which used to be called, again, the Azure Defender on piece to Security Center, but now with it all being called Microsoft Defender for Cloud, it's called Enhanced Security on. You get those continuous assessments and the secure scores, but now you get a lot more. You can set up just-in-time virtual machine access, which outside kind of the scope of this conversation, but it protects your attack surface on your virtual machines with management ports like RDP on Windows or SSH on Linux. We get adaptive application controls, network hardening. We get the regulatory compliance dashboard that I'll show in a moment as well. And then the various threat protection pieces for our virtual machines, our non-Azure servers, both on premises and other clouds, and the various platform services like containers, Kubernetes, databases, and storage accounts. All of those platform services, we get threat protection and vulnerability assessment capabilities with the security on. Now, there's a cost to it, and Microsoft's very upfront when you turn it on in terms of what the cost is per virtual machine, per database, per size of your storage account. All of those are right within the Defender for Cloud portal when you turn that on. And you get a 30-day, everybody gets a 30-day free trial of the enhanced security. So if you have and want to test it out, see how that helps you with your regulatory compliance, you can do that and turn that on. And if you decide, it doesn't make sense for me to pay for this, I just want the continuous assessment and secure score, you can always drop down to the free tier as well. And the key thing here, on this slide is really you get when we turn on those enhanced security features, there are regulatory standards that are set to your environment right out of the box, and then you can customize for the compliance standards that you need. You can remove those that are out of the box if you want to, and you get, again, you can customize the portal for the compliance standards that you require and the recommendations. You can then go through and set those recommendations. You can set alerts on vulnerabilities, and it's a very powerful tool from a security standpoint to maintain and manage your security posture, as well as, again, monitor your level of compliance to different standards and baselines. And as we go through, and as you start to build and put more resources into your Azure environment, you then can audit and remediate those. And you can do that through the Defender dashboard with your recommendations. And there are a lot of tools in terms of when you look here on this particular side, you might have the ability just to click a button and remediate those particular issues on those recommendations, and then move forward to putting those controls in place and protecting those resources that aren't covered in those resources. And it shows you what your secure score is going to do and what it's going to do to go up. We also get incident management within the Defender for Cloud with recommended steps, investigation dashboards, and alerts, and the ability to then take action to resolve those problems. And we can assign those to users, and it becomes a very powerful operations tool, as well as a management tool for our security posture. It helps us with monitoring against threats, and then also responding to potential threats as we find them. And I'm just going to touch on Microsoft Sentinel here real quick before we go into the demo, because I mentioned in the previous slide security operations. And if you do require or have a security operations center, one of the key pieces and things to think about as well is, do you have a security incident and event management system where you can run queries and do high-level investigations, and what reviews events and activity in your environment, and allows you then to investigate, find anomalies within that activity using machine learning and artificial intelligence. Microsoft Sentinel does all that for you on a cloud-based platform, and the only charge to that is the data that you're ingesting, and based on those events. And those are data that's ingested from multiple sources, such as AWS, Google, and other industry-leading security products. All can be ingested into this one source, and we can utilize this as a full security operations platform, including bringing in everything that comes from Microsoft Defender for Cloud, or an update this Visio, what was called Security Center. All of that feeds into Azure Sentinel, or Microsoft Sentinel, sorry. So let's jump into Security Center, and we'll do a walkthrough here of what we have within here. So so here we've got, I'm in my portal. Let me zoom in a little bit more here. There we go. And I do have Microsoft Defender for Cloud. I go into this quite a bit in terms of talking when I'm doing talks. I have the Defender services usually in my recents, and I can select Defender for Cloud, and this brings me right to my dashboard. Before I jump into this, we go jump back here a sec and show in terms of policy, which also is right here. What I wanted to show is you see here when you create your subscription, you get this policy. This policy gets created immediately for it's still ASC for Azure Security Center, but this is the default policy slash initiative for the security baseline that is part of what feeds into Microsoft Defender for Cloud. And we can actually go into our definitions here within policies and see all of our initiatives in here. And we can see the Azure Security Benchmark, which again is that ASC policy, has 207 policies that's looking at our environment and watching our environment. If I go and find our NIST 800-53, yeah, it's actually almost 1,000 policies now. So so that one that screenshot that I had that was under 800 has jumped up 200 policies since I put that screenshot in that slide. So so these are changing constantly. But if you have these initiatives in place, and if you're using those within Defender for Cloud, when those initiatives change, like if the Azure Security Baseline, if there's another policy added to it, it's going to govern your resources and it's going to audit your resources against that. And then it's going to show a potential change in your secure score. And you can see this is my demo environment. I don't have too many resources in here, and I don't have a whole lot of points in here, but I can go into the secure score, and immediately when I go into my secure score dashboard and go into my subscription, I will see ways that I can increase my secure score. And you immediately see, you know, what is causing the decrease or the low level of percentage in my score. Like I said, I don't have a whole lot of resources in here. I got some things that aren't scored right now in terms of security best practices. I always point out multi-factor authentication because I always get dinged on this in my trial environment, my test environment, because I don't put MFA on all my owner users, really, because I have some users that just, you know, they're just used for demo purposes, so I don't put MFA on them. We have, you know, vulnerabilities. This is, you know, doing vulnerability assessments on our virtual machines. I'm trying to find one in here that's got a quick fix button, but I don't think any of these necessarily do. If I go to one of these that I am non-compliant on and go to my subscription here, here's you know, this is telling me I've got a external account on here, and I can remove this from the account. Now this is my account, so I don't want to do that, but I do have an external account with owner permission, so it's flagging me on that. So most of these are identity based issues, because I don't think I have even a virtual machine running right now. But here I do have an event hub wanting logging. And one of the things about this and about these recommendations is it's not just putting a line item in here for recommendations. What it does is it describes what that recommendation is, why that recommendation is there, and it's going to then show you a remediation step. And with this particular one, it's got a quick fix. So I can very easily just right from the secure score dashboard do a quick fix on this. And then the next time, over the next 24 hours, when my resources are audited, my score will go up based on the recommendation, which based on this, it's going to go up 1 point and increase me 3%. So not a big impact, but an impact all the same. My biggest impact, and the biggest impact always, is on identity that I've found, which makes sense because identity is a very important aspect, and making sure your identities are protected and locked down, especially your identities that have users that have administrative rights and elevated privileges. We need to make sure that those are all protected. And so again, we could go to any one of these that have an issue, and like I said, you can see the remediation steps here. And if it is something that has a little bit more detail to it, you might actually have a link to Microsoft Docs. But again, everything is right here for you to manage your security posture, and that's ultimately what we're doing with our secure score. Is we're doing security posture management, and we're looking at what the baseline of a secure environment is across the entire Microsoft ecosystem, and we're getting recommendations on it, and then we're trying to adjust those recommendations. If I was to go to these recommendations and I feel that that the vulnerability assessment is not necessary, I can go into these, and I can make this create an exemption rule because I'm using a third-party tool. You know, if you're doing vulnerability assessments with something that is not Microsoft and not Microsoft Azure, you can create an exempt rule for that particular recommendation, provide documentation in there that you're using a third-party tool, you're using, you know, whatever you might be using, and then you can then pull that out of the secure score, and that'll bounce your secure score up. MFA would be a good example. If you're using another multi-factor authentication tool, like say Okta or something else that is not Microsoft's Azure AD MFA, you could again say, okay, I'm using a different tool for this. I create an exempt rule and explain what that is and why. And you can then, you know, set an expiration date. You can say it's mitigated, or we're accepting that risk. So you kind of, as you go through these recommendations, are also doing a risk assessment around this as well. You know, is there a cost to putting MFA in place? Is it something that I'm willing to accept, or am I mitigating it with another source? If I put multi-factor authentication through Azure Active Directory in place, it's going to audit those resources, and it's going to remediate that within the dashboard itself. But again, there might be ways and reasons why you're using another tool outside of Microsoft's tools within Azure. I bounced out of there by mistake. Other pieces that I wanted to show in here. If I look at and scroll down to my environment settings, I wanted to show here. I keep getting that error. I don't know why. I think that's something from what has changed. And you can see the enhanced security off, as I showed in the slide. You get the security recommendations, you get the secure score for your secure posture, but you get a lot more when you put the Defender for Cloud enhanced security enabled, and then you see what the costs are, and you can get an idea of what that's going to handle there. And you can see, you know, it handles pretty much your entire infrastructure in here. And when we talk about servers, again, if you're using virtual machines in an on-premises environment or in AWS or Google Cloud Platform, you can bring those into Defender for Cloud by utilizing Azure Arc, or there's a legacy way of putting an agent on those devices as well to pull that information into the Defender dashboard, and you'd be able then to see those resources as well. So and the key thing here when we're going, let me go back here a sec. And if I go into my workload protection piece, this is where those enhanced security settings are seen and known. And we can look here at a virtual machine here that's saying 1 unprotected. And if I look here, so this points out I don't have any virtual machines right now in my Azure environment. This is actually a virtual machine that is actually not a virtual machine, a bare metal desktop device that has the Azure Arc enabled on it. So here I am looking at an on-premises device within my Azure environment that I can then manage. I can run a vulnerability assessment on it. Again, so if you had multiple resources from different different clouds or from your on-premises data centers, you can pull that all into here as well and manage that. And let's see my compliance. If I go to my regulatory compliance, I'll show this to everybody quick, and then we'll pause and see if there's any questions or anything else that you want to see. Here we can see when we go into regulatory compliance, we have our Azure security benchmark, and you can see where immediately see where you might be missing certain controls in your security environment. And we can then again go into the control details. Again, this is another place where we can also accept risk or mitigate that risk based on whether we're using a third party or not. And if I go up here and look at my ISO 27001, we can see again, if they're grayed out, you don't have any resources that it pertains to. If you have other operations in here, you can see logging. I don't have event logging or operator logs, so I can go in here and see what those are. And here's diagnostic settings are not on. I have a resource that is not pulling diagnostics, so we might want to put that in place, and we can then get compliant in that area. And that's really what the help here, what Microsoft's doing for you is, if you have a level of compliance or a regulatory requirement that you have, you can use the regulatory compliance dashboard. You can put that resource, put that regulatory standard in here. It's going to audit your resources, and it is then going to tell you where you fall short. And it also, the nice thing is if you're looking at the handbook for NIST SP 800-53, this goes right in line with that documentation. So if an auditor was to come in and audit you on NIST 800-53, they would be going through each one of these steps. They're going to look at access control. They're going to look at awareness and training. They're going to look at audit and accountability. They're going to be checking through each one of these. If you, prior to them coming to audit you, go through and turn all these, get these all turned to green, it should give you a less painful audit. And then really that those enhanced features that you're paying for within Defender for Cloud probably pay for itself based on the amount of time that the auditor is going to spend in your facility. So that's about all I had to show. We'll open it up for any questions or anything else that I may have missed and anybody wants to know within Defender for Cloud.
If anyone has any questions or comments, and if you'd like to discuss anything with Dwayne, please feel free to unmute yourself and you can ask anything to Dwayne. There is actually a question on the chat where Mike is asking, Mike, do you want to go unmute yourself and you want to ask the question to Dwayne?
No, he's got lots of background noise. He says, yeah, I mean, you can like even here within the compliance center, you can see here we've got this download report button. So we could download this and hand this off to our auditor that here we go. And there are resources out there on GitHub for initiatives and policy creation. Because yeah, one of the things we didn't go really deeply into policy and policy creation, but if we go to our definitions here in policies, we can create our own policies and our own initiatives. And there are ways to export these definitions, and then you can modify them and customize them to your particular needs. And there are a lot of resources out on GitHub too for Defender for Cloud, for Sentinel, for the MVP community, as Vabev can attest to, is very active and very helpful to everybody out there. I hope that answered your question, Mike, in terms of where you were going with that question or statement. But yeah, you can do a lot. Can definitely customize those policies, and even, I think you can even
Hi.
customize.
So yeah, so I kind of got the background noise down for just a few seconds.
Sure.
So I'm trying to leverage this option where you can export the initiative and policies and assignments to GitHub and then edit it. However, the documentation from Microsoft, it's good. It gives you an idea. I just looking for more insightful uh, guidance on it. I'm trying to use this option to edit the initiatives and then bring them back into Azure and apply them at a management group level. But I'm having a little challenge in trying to do that. That's what I was trying to find out from you,
Gotcha.
if there were resources to be able to do that.
Yeah, you should be able, if you could export particular definitions here, like I said, bring those into GitHub and then, and adjust them accordingly, or just even adjust them in like Visual Studio or something like that. And then you can then create your own policy definition or your own initiatives, and create custom policies and initiatives that way.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
All right, looks like that's pretty much no one has any questions here. So thanks, Dwayne, for the wonderful session. Are you done, Dwayne? Do you have
I am
anything else
all
to share?
I am all set. Thank you very much, Vabev. I appreciate everybody with their giving me time today. Hopefully this has been valuable and helpful. So yeah, I'll turn it over to you, Vabev.
And on behalf of the user group, Dwayne, once again, thank you so much for taking out time.
Oh, you're very welcome. Anytime.